Good evening, Mrs. Keith. We would like to have a couple of minutes of an introduction, so if you would provide us 2 minutes. I think we're going to be timed this evening, and we really appreciate your being here today.
Thank you so much, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, Mr. Smith and the NAACP of Stuart, Martin County, here in Stuart. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here with an organization that has served the African American community and the entire United States so honorably for so long. My name is Pam Keith, and I am running to represent this community in Washington, D.C. I am the daughter of a United States diplomat. So for those who don't know, my father was serving our country overseas, projecting American values and interests in foreign lands when I was born. And so I learned from a very young age that there's something particularly special about the United States of America. It's not a perfect land, but it's a land that our founding fathers made able to be more perfect through the will and the sacrifice and the efforts of her people. And that's what makes this place so special. All over the world, in countries that I lived in, people envied the United States as that shining city on a hill, that place where people could make the most of their gifts and talents. And I got the opportunity to do that. I have an undergraduate degree, a master's degree in public speaking, and that should not surprise you. I also have a law degree from Boston College in Boston, Massachusetts. And after graduating from law school, I joined the United States Navy and followed in my father's footsteps to serve the country that I cherish. I then became a corporate attorney. I served in some of the biggest law firms in the country and got to represent some of our most productive and effective companies. But to whom much is given, much is required. And if the corporations of America were willing to pay for my services to represent them, then the people of the United States could do no better than my best effort to represent them. And that's what I'm doing today, giving the case for why I should be hired to represent you in Washington, D.C.
Thank you so very much for that amazing introduction. And I just want to let the folks know that we have three wonderful, two, and then there's me. Three wonderful moderators tonight, and I just wanted to take that opportunity to introduce Connor Ehrlich, who is a junior at Martin County High School. All right. Ms. Alisia Harriel, who is profound in our community, and my name is Jean Moss Scott. Questioning, and I just want to ask you, what do you perceive to be the United States as well as Florida's greatest challenges as a nation over the next decade?
There are tiers of challenges that the United States face. The first one is the dismantling of our respect for the Constitution, the right of people to vote, and free and fair governance of our country. That is by far the first and biggest challenge, because the minute you start to undermine the ability of the people to move out the government that they don't like or to change the laws because of that, then you've now taken away the core founding law of the United States of America. So first, we have to deal with that problem, and sadly, in this situation, that means removing the president and all who enable him. But the second thing that we need to deal with is what is happening to our economy because of coronavirus. First of all, the virus is not contained. It is still spreading wildly throughout our country. Second of all, it is having a significant economic impact because so many of the mom and pop businesses, so many of the small companies out there are going away forever, and we're not being honest about the impact of that. We're going to need one heck of a robust, nationally driven effort to get people into work and back to work, and that's going to be a major heavy lift. The third thing we have to be honest about is the serious threat of climate change. It is affecting everywhere, but it is affecting Florida the worst and the fastest. Sea level rise, rising tides and temperatures, and stronger storms are going to affect us. And all of the investments that we make in development, real estate, jobs, or whatever, can be dismantled in a heartbeat by a really strong storm. And we're getting stronger and more frequent storms coming our way because of climate change. We should not be, as the United States, following behind Belgium or Luxembourg or any other country. We should be leading the charge on climate change all over the world.
Thank you, Mrs. Keith. So you talked about climate change. When you take office, how will you ensure that our waters stay blue and our homes above water?
Well, I am delighted to be on a political team that actually believes in environmental stewardship and science. I love that. We are tree huggers over on the Democratic side of the aisle. We believe in the environment. And one of the things that I have been known to be is an activist and an organizer. And so I plan to be an activist and an organizer in Congress too. I'm going to activate and organize the people who believe in clean water and clean air. Thank God there's lots of them on my side. And I'm going to bring them here, perhaps in February, when it's freezing where they are. And it's beautiful down here. I'm going to bring them here with their families and their kids. And I'm going to take them to the springs in North Florida. I'm going to take them down here to the Everglades. I'm going to show them all of our waterways and our beaches. And I'm going to say, hey, this gorgeous thing that you're looking at is under threat right now. We need to appropriate the resources to protect our environment, to save our Everglades, to reduce and mitigate saltwater incursions into our aquifers, and to save our natural springs. And because they like water, I'll say, hey, you vote for my water appropriation, and I will vote for yours in Flint, Michigan, or in Maine, or in Colorado, where you're trying to save the Colorado River. We work together as a coalition because that's what activists and organizers do. And that's how you get across the line the money that you need to save our water management and Everglades infrastructure.
Thank you. With people of color being disproportionately impacted by the coronavirus, COVID-19, what is your take on healthcare? What would you do if you were in office to improve the healthcare that we are facing now?
I have always believed that it has been folly for someone's healthcare to be exclusively tied to their employment, because it was originally meant to be a fringe benefit as a reward for your productivity. But in this country, it should be a fruit of citizenship to have health coverage. It is my sincere belief that healthcare is a right and not a privilege, certainly in a country as wealthy as our own. So I support universal health coverage in the fastest way that we can get there. The first thing we have to do is salvage the Affordable Care Act. It is an immediate threat because the Supreme Court has taken its eyes out to cut it to shreds. Those 23 million Americans who count on it right now are going to be left out in the cold. And they're going to join the 40 million Americans who recently lost their health care because they've lost employment. So let's be honest about the labor market of the future. Fewer and fewer people are going to be in 9-to-5 jobs where healthcare is part of their benefits package. More and more people are going to work from home for themselves in the gig economy as projects or contractors or consultants, and they're going to need affordable healthcare. And that's why healthcare that is personal, portable, and lifelong is the direction that we need to go, that can never be taken from you. So that if you happen to break your leg or, God forbid, get diabetes or cancer, you're not also wondering, am I going to be bankrupt while I'm trying to save my own life? That is a moral bankruptcy that needs to be addressed immediately, and we need to be moving in the direction of doing that. So I do support single-payer system. I believe that it's the most equitable, the most economic, and the most efficient way to get all Americans covered. Right now, we do the opposite of what's intelligent, right? We have every company having to do open enrollment and hire people for benefits. Then we have an entire administration for people over 65, another for the people who are poor, another for the people who are young. We got Medicaid, 50 different Medicaid administrations, and all of that is duplicative. Wouldn't it make more sense to have one system that you can buy into from the very beginning and have with you no matter where you live in America? One set of rules, a predictability that you know you always have what you need. And I guarantee you that that is going to be not only much cheaper, but it's going to end up with much better health outcomes for all of us. That's the way to go.
Thank you so much. In a recent advertisement, you stated soldiers don't fight out of hate for those before them, but out of love for those behind them. Both you and Brian Mass are veterans. You actually, the two of you are going to be debating, and you're going to be like probably the first veterans to have such a debate. How will you support our veterans, both locally and on a national scale?
Let's be honest. We have a whole crew of veterans we don't even see. They live under bridges, they hide in the dark. We don't recognize that they have been isolated, that they live with depression and anxiety and incapacity to communicate with people because the folks who haven't been through what they have been through can't relate to what they're dealing with. So one of the first things I want to do for the veterans of this country is to build what I call veterans firehouses. These are community-based centers that are open 24/7, 365, staffed only by veterans for veterans. And you can go there to watch a football game, to have a hot meal, or just have a conversation with another veteran. And during the day, they'll help you with your benefits, they'll help you find a job, but you will never, ever feel like there is a moment in your life where you cannot find support as a veteran. That's the first thing I want to do. The second thing I want to do is address the fact that we treat veterans as if they are an accident, when we know we make veterans when we make troops. So we need to move the Veterans Administration out of domestic discretionary spending subject to sequester and cuts, and put the VA in the Department of Defense, part and parcel of the cost of war. Because if we are sending people to war and making warriors, we darn well better have the money to take care of them when they get back. It should stop. Third thing I will do is I will absolutely work with the VA to reverse the attitude when it comes to veterans claims. Currently, our system is this: if you jumped out of planes in Vietnam and you're now 65 or 66 years old, you have to reconstruct what you did in Vietnam to prove that your back pain is service connected. Good luck with that. You will get kicked to the back of the line over and over. You get this expert in that, and it can take you 5, 10, or even 15 years to get your claim paid. I say that's ridiculous. Let's reverse it. Let's give the VA 90 days to disprove your claim, and if they cannot do it, pay it and move on. And if that means more veterans get their benefits, I am perfectly okay with that.
All right. Breonna Taylor, Michael Brown, Trayvon Martin, George Floyd. How can the justice system work to rectify the wrongdoings endured by minorities, especially African Americans?
Step number one is to have an intellectual reckoning in our country. Because from the very beginning of this country, there has been this presumption that there are owners of this land, there are residents of this land, there are tenants of this land, and trespassers upon this land. And I want to explain to people what they're seeing when they see Black Lives Matter as a movement. Black Lives Matter is an assertion of fact, but it's also a claim of arrival, a psychological arrival, which is we no longer accept the paradigm that there are owners of this land and tenants of this land. All of us are equal owners of this land. Our ancestors all paid the price to keep this country safe and to get it running. Nobody owns more of it than anybody else. And we're not asking anymore. We're simply stating it as a matter of fact. Black lives do matter. And the important part of that is the part that's unsaid. As much as any other lives. Rich lives, poor lives, young lives, old lives, they all matter as much as each other. And we're no longer going to accept a paradigm in which policing is about protecting and defending and serving one population and simply containing and controlling another population. Because the underlying assumption is excessive force and excessive aggression and shoot first and ask questions later is acceptable in this population because it somehow protects that one. But we're not going to trade the humanity of each other anymore. That's what it's about. And once we get to that realization and an acceptance of that, then we can start looking at specific things like making sure we have sentencing reform, making sure that we move judges who are so racially biased, biased against the poor, biased against non-native speakers, and so forth. We can change our paradigm about the school to prison pipeline, that somehow misbehavior in one population is far more dangerous than misbehavior in another. We can do so much because we need to move away from the notion that incarcerating people is the way of containing threat. We feel threatened by people with mental illness, we put them in jail. That's wrong. We feel threatened by somebody who looks different than us, we try to make sure that they get over-policed. That's wrong. We have a better way forward as a country that loves and respects and admires each of us. Nobody is looking for dominance here, but no one's willing to accept it either.
We have 2 minutes, but I think it's important that we know why should a voter select Pam Keith over Brian Mass?
Brian and I have seas of difference between us. Principally, it's our judgment. You see, I know how to discern that which is true and that which is not true because I use the old standards of what is and what is not true. Things like expertise, knowledge, facts, education, those things that we usually use to determine that somebody knows what they're talking about. In today's Trumpism world, the only criteria of whether something is credible or not is the degree to which it lines up with your personal motivations. They jettisoned the notion that there is objective truth. If it's spoken from someone who's a liberal, then it should be discounted and you don't have to listen to it no matter how much evidence might back it up. Brian buys into that notion, which means that he has tabled his ability to discern the truth from a lie. He stands with a man who has lied to the American people thousands and thousands of times, most especially when we were put under the threat of a deadly pandemic. If Brian knew that what Trump said was not true, it was his job to tell us so. If Brian didn't know that what Trump was saying wasn't true, then he's got a judgment problem. And if he did know that what Trump was saying wasn't true, he's got a morality problem. I have neither. That's my issue. That's me.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Keith. I think we're going to transition into the viewer questions. So this question is from Lawrence Key. When our institutions are being attacked and deintegrated, how should we respond? I seem to remember your opponent voted to take our healthcare away and insisted he was doing the right thing.
He was doing the right thing for his future and political ambition, that's for sure. Was he doing the right thing for the people of City 18? Absolutely not. But then again, that is the pattern of Brian Mast. He does what his party tells him to do. He has no record of standing up to that if it doesn't make sense for the people of his district. He tried for a hot minute with assault weapons, and once he got slapped down on that, he backed down real quick. See, I don't feel like my allegiance is to my party, which is part of the reason it's taken me 4 tries to get here. I think my allegiance is to the people. And I've always stayed consistent in what I say. I'm proud of the fact that I haven't had to flip-flop on anything, because I've been speaking truth from the very beginning. I will also tell you this, our institutions are being gutted from within because the assumption of virtually every institution in America is that it serves the people, be it the FBI, the IRS, the health department, the FDA, they all serve the American people. But in Trump land, you can only serve Donald Trump. And so he moves out anyone who is going to curtail him in any way for the benefit of the American people. He puts in toadies who will do whatever he wants, people like Louis DeJoy and people like Betsy DeVos, who don't understand that they're not there. They're being paid by the taxpayers to serve the American people, but they believe that their mission is to change the institution so that it can be used to benefit Donald Trump. We've seen it in too many ways to count, but most especially it was in the State Department when Donald Trump tried to use the international power and standing of the United States to force a country to malign Joe Biden to help him win an election. It was an abomination. He deserved to be impeached for that. I not only would have voted to impeach him once, but I would vote to impeach him twice because it was an abomination. He should have been held responsible for that, and I think on November 3rd, he will be.
Pam, you characterized your opponent, Brian Mast, very well. I mean, you mentioned how if he thought this was true, then he has this problem. If he thought this was true, he has this problem. He has voted with Trump 90% of the time. If you look at his legislation, in our county, he's considered a local hero because of our waterways, and because he's against offshore drilling. So he's fine with our interests when it comes to the environment, but everybody overlooks his concerns with the environment across the country. Now, some of your proposals you mentioned tonight, which I really cherish, the Central House proposal for veterans, the medical care proposal, those are going to be expensive propositions. The other thing that Republicans tout is the healthy economy. Well, wait till the fourth quarter comes out. An economy is a lot more than stock market. So that's my question to you is, given our current economic situation, what are you proposing to bring the economy back?
Well, you know, as a baby member of Congress, a junior member, I don't have a lot of control as to where I'm placed. That's largely the leadership of my party that will determine that. But I plan to bloom where I am planted. That's what you do in Congress. But the way you get anything of any real significance in the United States of America is to build a movement in support of it. Now, Brian likes to chastise my tweets, but has he noticed that 100,000 people pay attention to what I say and I'm just getting started? I know how to build movements. And members of Congress respond to pressure from their own constituents. So maybe I can convince some constituents to talk to their members about the stuff they want. I think I might give it a shot. But I tell you, we will have some major financial challenges in the future. That doesn't mean we abandon our responsibilities to the environment or to our veterans or to healthcare. We just have to find smarter ways of approaching these things. And maybe that involves getting revenue in new and different ways. We've been very stymied in how we raise revenue in this country because of the politicization of taxation. We've allowed people to squirrel billions of dollars offshore and still enjoy the benefits of this country. So maybe we need to rethink some of the things that we've been doing. And again, it's not entirely up to me. You negotiate, you make proposals, some people agree, some people disagree. But you do your best effort. That's all you can do. I will build popular support for smart ideas. It's what I do. I think I do it pretty well.
Thank you.
Another question from our chat from Ms. Loretta Hall. Do you have a plan to address systematic racism? If so, what is that plan?
I don't think you can have one plan to address systematic racism. You have to have lots of plans. You know, if you're talking about things like housing and urban development, right? That's a department that was responsible for establishing housing programs. Now, back in the day, right after World War II, they set up this building program for suburbs of the United States. They built thousands of suburbs all over the country. We did not call that socialism. We call that a darn good idea to create a middle class. And they intentionally made sure that it was accessible to white people and not to black people. That is what you mean by institutional racism. If you go to Detroit, you will find a black neighborhood. If you go to Fort Pierce, you'll find a black neighborhood. If you go to Atlanta, you'll find a black neighborhood, because neighborhoodizing and sort of drawing circles around populations was something that the Department of Housing and Urban Development did for decades and did on purpose. So that which is done can be undone, with new and thoughtful ideas of integrating societies and cultures and using our resources to the greater good. And you can kill more than one bird with one stone. Let's think about it. We have this we have an affordable housing problem. We have a jobs problem, right? We have an immigration problem. Why don't we do them all together? We have an environmental problem. We could do sustainable housing with tiny houses that promote livable communities, get people equity stakes in their property, and give us jobs and get people off the street. You can do all of that in one fell swoop as you started getting creative. And believe me, I am creative.
Please share your views on the situation that is now being faced by African Americans as it relates to Trump making the appointment to the Supreme Court.
My heart was broken when Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed on, and it's not like she didn't hold on as long as she could. I don't think Trump has made any effort to hide his negative intentions and animus towards people of color, especially African Americans. Trump made clear that he thinks that Nazis are very fine people, and I just beg to differ on every level possible. It's an existential threat to us because Trump believes that encumbering the votes of people who don't vote with him is perfectly acceptable behavior. And by the way, that is the core principle of the entire GOP. They make no noise about the fact that they think gerrymandering is fabulous and misdirection as to when the elections are is great, and having long lines in black districts is perfect. They think that's fabulous. Hey, let's have more laws to make it harder to vote, because we can encumber and have fewer black voters if we make onerous ID laws and other things. Because at base, they just don't think black votes should count the same as white votes, because that's the underlying principle behind those notions. No one who calls themselves an American should be acceptable with the encumbrance of anybody else's vote, period. For any reason, there's not a micron of my body that would be comfortable with Republican votes being suppressed because they don't agree with me. My job is to help them agree with me, not to stop them from voting. And yet it has been a pattern and accepted reality in our country for a very long time that people think it's okay to make it harder for those who disagree with them to vote. And it is Ruth Bader Ginsburg who has been the front of that on a variety of issues, not just with members of our country who are African American or minorities, but with women as well. She was a champion of the women's right to their autonomy, to be full participants in the economy in every conceivable way. So, is it a threat? Yes, it is. But I warn Mr. Trump and his enablers, if you want a country with no rules, be careful what you ask for. Because we're not going to just accept you moving the goalposts whenever you think you've got the power. At the end of the day, there are more of us. And we're happy to be co-equal with you. But you're going to have to be co-equal with us.
Thank you so very much. We really appreciate your being here. We appreciate your candidacy, and we look forward to continuing to hear from you and continuing to see you in Congress.
Okay.
Okay, we're ready to get started. Hi there, thank you for being with us tonight. I believe we're going to start again with the 2-minute introductions. Ms. Harriel, if you'd like to start.
I think it's on. Thank you. First of all, I want to say thank you for the NAACP for doing this. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us to speak directly to you, voter. And I have a lot of friends here. Thank you, Bill Meyer, for being here. You're just a dear friend for so many years. It's great to see you, Kimmy. Thank you for arranging this. I'm Alisia Harriel. I'm your state senator representing District 25. I had the previous privilege of representing this area in the State House in District 83. I am a longtime Republican member of the Florida legislature. I served a total of, about 16 years in the Florida legislature in the House, and now 2 years in the Senate. And during that time, I've learned a whole lot. I'm a 49-year resident of the Treasure Coast. I've been here, part of this community for so many years. Many of you may remember my wonderful husband, Dr. James Harriel, and I ran his practice for many years. I taught in our public school system with Elmira when she was there, and saw many of the children of this community grow up and go off and become very successful. I have 4 wonderful kids, 8 amazing grandchildren. And I know this community. I've been part of this community. I have been part of the legislature as well, and I have a great deal of experience in this difficult time of COVID and the difficult problems this state faces. We have got to have someone in Tallahassee who knows our community, knows our values, and also has the experience to deal with a very challenging time that we face. You need someone in Tallahassee who's going to bring our voice up there and have the experience to get things done. It is a major challenge, both from a budget point of view and also from the many other challenges that COVID has presented. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Senator Harrell. If Mrs. Valderramos Robinson would like to go next for 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Jimmy Smith, and everyone tuning in tonight for having us here. It's truly a humbling opportunity to share this evening and let you know just a little bit about who Karina is. I spent 25 years on active duty serving in the United States Army Military Police Corps. And during that time, I was really blessed to have raised 3 sons who are here tonight, Jamil, Javon, and Julian. And they are half African American. So truly tonight is special, and I'm so grateful they're here tonight. In addition to my military service, I had the opportunity to serve as a director at the Pentagon overseeing anti-terrorism and force protection programs. I worked quite a bit with local, state, and federal agencies, as well as guardsmen and several services. I then continued on to run for Congress back at home in South Dakota. Did very well, but no regrets. And then I decided to come back to Capitol Hill and work as a fellow, and then continue on my education and to serve abroad and to be able to work with different countries in strategy and policy. So here I am. I've owned property in Florida for over 15 years, and I look forward to settling down near my family and being your next state senator. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I guess this question is directed first at Ms. Valderramos Robinson. So earlier this week, Governor Ron DeSantis introduced an act increasing the punishment on disorderly assemblies and cutting off state funding to local governments that defund their police budgets. Do you support this policy? And if not, what would you have done differently?
Well, I would personally love to have this conversation with the governor. Having a doctorate of management in Homeland Security, where I definitely focused a lot on emergency management, including my dissertation on legislative decision-making. And in that process, I believe that our governor, again, following in Trump's behalf in trying to make sure that he's not considered confrontational with what he's being told to do, that defunding the police is absolutely wrong. I spent the majority of my career working with military police and police officers. We cannot take away that funding because they need the training, they need the equipment, everything they need to do their jobs effectively. And with regard to the pressure on people who want to peacefully protest, whether that be in large gatherings or small gatherings, they should not feel intimidated as long as they're not being violent. Countering violent extremism roundtables on Capitol Hill. I mean, we had think tanks there, we had agencies there. So in Tallahassee, I welcome those discussions with the governor and all the senators in the House reps. Thank you.
Same question for you, Senator Harrell. Would you support this proposal if it came up in legislative session during 2021?
Thank you. I think we're all having microphone problems tonight. Thank you. I think this is a very challenging time and very challenging issues that we face. And we need to have a serious conversation on how we make sure that we are maintaining law and order. And I think that is essential. It is the _1 responsibility of government to maintain law and order. How we do that, we need to make sure we have the funds in it. I do not believe in defunding the police. What I believe we also need to do is to make sure our police have the kinds of training that they need so that we don't have difficult incidents, that we don't have people being killed and not having consequences for it. We need to make sure that we also look at the mental health aspect of this. I am so pleased that Sheriff Snyder approached me several years ago about funding a special mental health unit. He saw the need in our community, and I worked very closely with him as we started looking and seeing how we could fund this. And I actually was able to procure the funds to start a very special unit to make sure that we have mental health counselors who were there with our law enforcement who could de-escalate situations. I think we need to look at different ways of doing things, but law and order is absolutely the fundamental responsibility of government.
Good evening. Good evening, Senator Harriel. I have a question that actually will be posed to both you and Mrs. Boulder and Ms. Robinson. As you know, the Federal Appellate Court just overturned a ruling on Amendment 4, now requiring all legal fees, fines, and restitution to be paid prior to felons regaining their right to vote. Do you support Governor DeSantis' victory to keep felons from voting until they paid off these fines?
I think the bill that was passed, and that was Senate Bill 7066, went through the legislative process. And we worked very closely and very hard to make sure that there were means by which individuals could actually go back to court and get those fines and fees waived or reduced. That came out of the Senate, and I sit on the Criminal Justice Appropriations Committee for many years. Actually, the Criminal Justice Committee for many years, and this year on the Appropriations Committee. And we worked very closely in the Senate to make sure that there was the ability for individuals to actually go back to the court and get those fines and fees either reduced or waived. I want to make sure that people have the right to vote. But the constitutional amendment did say, and this bill that did pass meets the test of the four corners of what you must have in the legislation to implement a constitutional amendment. And it did provide, in the words that actually went to the Supreme Court when that, and the arguments before the Supreme Court, when the amendment was drafted and put on the ballot, specifying, and actually in that argument that was made before the Supreme Court, they did talk about fines and fees. And this legislation gave you waiver so that you could actually go back and to the court and be able to vote by having those fines and fees waived.
And just to piggyback off that, you do realize that this was an initiative on the ballot by Florida citizens, and that Florida citizens voted overwhelmingly that felons should have the right to vote. So why do you believe that the legislature could then pick it up and try to overturn what the citizens of this great state had spoken?
The bill that did pass fulfilled the requirements of the amendment very specifically. And I would ask that you go back and watch the videos from the Supreme Court presentation when the people who presented the amendment went before the Supreme Court to defend, to have them approve the language that went on the ballot. We had many discussions and many arguments in the Florida legislature as we looked very carefully at that. And we wanted to make sure that this legislation met the test, the constitutional test that amendment required. And it did, and the Supreme Court upheld that. And the District Court of Appeals in the federal legislature, the federal court system, upheld that.
So as we prepare for another election, so many young people believe their vote doesn't matter. And when we have situations when the voters speak and then the legislature can just pick it up and overturn it, isn't that nothing more than voter suppression?
I would totally disagree with you. I think this was carefully drafted. That is not voter suppression. In fact, I was very much in favor and a big supporter of the waiver process that actually goes beyond what the four corners of the amendment, specifically in the language that was discussed before the Supreme Court, before it went to the ballot. And the arguments that were made before it went to the ballot were very clear that fines and fees were included. And that you have, but we wanted to give a waiver because we understood that could be problematic.
Thank you. Ms. Bowler and Ms. Robinson, I'm going to ask the same question. The original question is, as you know, the federal appellate court just overturned a ruling on Amendment 4, now requiring all legal fees, fines, and restitution to be paid. Are you also in agreement with this court's ruling?
No, I am not in favor. Matter of fact, I think it is shameful that the people of this great state of Florida voted to have that amendment passed. And at the time they were voting, when I was working with the League of Women Voters last year as a chair for the Speakers Bureau, I talked about how critically important that amendment was. And I know we had a great turnout and it did pass. And I don't think anyone had a reasonable expectation that there was going to be the expectation for people to pay their fines before they could vote. And the majority of people incarcerated are minorities, especially here in Florida. And they want to have served their time to be able to vote. It's their right. It's almost like if somebody didn't pay their income taxes, does that keep them from voting? No, it doesn't. So they deserve that right. And now we have a situation where we have Bloomberg, who's willing to give a great deal of money to help those felons pay their fines just so they can vote. That's how important that is.
Thank you. Senator Harriel, this is a question for both of you all. On the ballot this year, we have a minimum wage.
Are we gonna rotate back and forth?
Yes. Oh, you can go first, Ms. Robertson, and then we'll ask Senator Harriel to go after. Perfect. We have a ballot initiative, minimum wage increase that will start in September 2021 that will increase over time to 2026, $1 incentive each year. With our minimum wage now in Florida, a little bit over $8.50. Would you support this amendment of increasing minimum wage to help grow our economy since we have this downfall from coronavirus?
Absolutely. It is not unreasonable, especially now during this pandemic, that we should increase the minimum wage every year. I would say hopefully till we can get to $15 an hour, and then make sure it keeps up with the cost of living. Then everyone can be able to take better care of their families, afford health care, and pay their sons and daughters college tuition. I mean, it's not too much to ask for. We are capable of doing that in America.
You want to repeat the questions for me, please?
Yes, we have Amendment 2 on the ballot this year that would increase minimum wage here in Florida. The current minimum wage is a little bit over $8.50. With this ballot initiative, this will increase to $15 an hour by 2026. Would you approve or support this amendment to help grow our economy back here in Florida?
We are facing a huge economic crisis in the state of Florida as a result of COVID. There is no doubt about it. And I think as opposed to arbitrarily raising the minimum wage, we really need to look and see what we can do to grow the economy. That is a much better way to handle this. We really need to make sure that we keep taxes low, we make sure we reduce regulation, and then we really look at those, many of these jobs are probably not coming back. So we need to retrain our workers. This is one of the reasons why I come to support the Advanced Manufacturing Center that Indiana River State College is trying to build. In fact, I got $4.2 million 2 years ago, we're $1 million this year, but because of the pandemic, the governor vetoed that money. That is a much better way to really raise the minimum wage. Let's do it through incentives. Let's do it through growing our economy. That works much better, and we will not put a lot of small businesses out of work. We have to make that payroll every single 2 weeks or every week. It becomes very difficult if you have arbitrary numbers as to what you have to pay people. I run a business. I know how tough that is. And believe me, your employees get paid first before you do. So we want to make sure we're encouraging that development of entrepreneurship. We're retraining workers, and that we are making sure that we build our economy.
So I just want to make sure I understand this, Harold. Do you agree with the amendment to increase the minimum wage?
I think the voters will vote on that. I think there are better ways to do it.
Okay, my question would be then, do you understand the full impact of raising a family on the current minimum wage? And why would you disagree or want to not address that issue of increasing the minimum wage when we have to feed our children, put clothes on their back, make sure the rent is paid, keep lights on? So why can you not address the issue of increasing the minimum wage from its current state of $8 to maybe $1 more a year so that somebody can continue to raise a family?
The best way to do this is to educate, to retrain, and make sure people get better jobs. I think that is absolutely the best way to help people pay those bills, afford their children, make those, get that home. That's the way to do it. Increase, we need to, and we've done this greatly, is enhance our educational system. This year we made major strides in really improving our education system. We're now number 3 in the country. In fact, we have put $500 million into increasing teacher salaries. Education is the way to do this. Entrepreneurship, building the economy, and making sure that we have the ability for people to really earn that high wage. I want it to be more than $15 an hour. I want people to earn a whole lot more than that. And you go in that direction by, first of all, making sure you have a sound economy and people have the education to get those high-paying jobs.
Thank you, Senator Harrell. So this next question is posed at both of you. The science behind climate change is irrefutable, and we only have 10 years left to act before irreversible damage is done. Currently, there's a state preemption that prevents local governments from banning plastic bags and other recyclable materials. If elected, will you reverse or uphold preemptions like this that hold us back from addressing environmental concerns? Please keep your answers to 2 minutes.
Thank you. That's difficult to do. I do not support that initiative to eliminate the preemption by the state to deal with this. This again becomes an economic issue, and it's very hard when you have various companies. You have Publix, for instance, that has stores all over the state. It becomes very, very difficult if you don't have a state standard. These kinds of laws need to be at the state level, not at the local level. I believe there are better ways to do things. I've done major environmental legislation. Stopping the releases from Lake Okeechobee is a key element, a key initiative that I have been very involved in. We need to look across the state at our various climate issues. We put a lot of money into resiliency, and I think that is the way to go.
Thank you.
Yes. You don't have to. You don't have to repeat the question. Can you hear me? Better? Okay. What I'd like to say before I forget, just a humbled old soldier, I don't talk about endorsements much because I'm just trying to do my job. But I was grateful to get the endorsement of the Sierra Club and the Democratic Environmental Caucus from Florida. And I believe that at a state level, we do need to mandate better means of making sure we take care of the environment. We don't want to take away control and decision making from the local level, but sometimes we need to do things at the state level. And I believe in making sure we use less plastics is an example of that.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll start with questions from the audience in the chat. I'll start the first question from our chat from Mr. David Cross for Senator Harrell. In 2013, you voted for House Bill 999.
I think it's we spelled Ramos's term.
Oh, this question was directed to you from our chat from Zoom. Woosah. You voted for House Bill 999. That bill legislates 30-year land leases in the EAA, preempted local fertilizer ordinances, and restricted the Florida DEP ability to test pollution and water discharges. Do you still support that vote?
That was, I would have to look at that legislation. That was many years ago. I don't remember the specifics of that legislation. Specifically, and I really cannot answer that. There are many, legislation has many components. There may have been other things in there, as I remember, there was additional money for the Everglades. I can't remember that. So let me pull the bill up and I can get back with you on that. But I will have to read that bill to see exactly what was in it and, you know, what was related to that vote.
We have a question from the audience.
Yeah, I got a couple. I want to reply to a couple things that were said. And also, is this on?
Yes.
Okay, and I also got a question. Both you all say you were against defunding the police, but as a black man, I'm from Martin County, childhood all the way through, and you can't begin to empathize with us as what it feels like to see the police. They don't even have to be behind you just to see the police. The schools don't have any money. Each year, the police fund goes up by several $1 million here in Martin County, and each year the school funding goes down by several $1 million. The community organizations, the funding for those go down. For the football programs, all of that is going down. The money's being taken and sent to the police force. We are well over police. You guys said they need training. They don't need training because they know who to kill. They know who to kill. It's that simple. Do not spend no more money on training the police. You need to detrain, okay? Sorry, I got this mask on, got to go in here. And when I hear law and order, when black people hear law and order, black people my age who are astute to history, law and order means keep Negroes in line. Every time you all say law and order, that's what we hear. So you might want to find a new talking point when you want to try to talk about law and order, because law and order has only did nothing but keep us in line. And paying employees, these are just my rebuttals. I'm a small business.
You have 4 minutes, so if you could ask
Okay.
a question.
Yeah, I got a small business. I do paint and body work, and if I can't afford to pay somebody $15 an hour today, I need to do the work myself. And the question is for Mrs. Harriel, because this is something that the governor just passed, where it's legal to run over people, protesters, if you're in fear of your life. They up misdemeanors to felonies. And did you vote yes or no on that? And why did you vote yes or no on that?
That is a proposal that will be before the legislature. It is not, I have not voted on it, and I don't know what condition it will be in when it actually comes to the legislature. So I can't tell you what my vote will be. I will have to see the legislation as it is presented.
Well, what are your thoughts on what was presented? Whatever he presented, I seen it on the news. You know what I'm talking about. What were your thoughts on what was presented?
I think we need to address the violence that's taking place in our streets.
What violence in Florida? What violence is going on in Florida and where? Please let me know.
We have had significant problems down in the Miami-Dade area.
With the police beating up people? Because the police are initiating all this violence that you guys, see, you want to give them training to beat us up. That's what I'm trying to figure out where we're going here.
I think we need a whole community conversation, and your voice is being heard, and we need to hear from your people.
We've been, our people, we've been saying the same thing for 100 years.
Answer the question.
You're right, I'm
We're gonna
sorry.
let both of them answer
You're
the
right.
question.
I value your opinion, I truly do. And your voice needs to be heard. And that's one of the things that I would propose, is that we have this community conversation. And that we really look at our standards for law enforcement, how they are trained. And we need to make sure that they understand your concerns and that they hear your voice. So that kinds of retraining and upgrading of our police force, I believe, is the key to really dealing with a lot of the anger and frustration I hear with you. And I would love to have a further conversation with you.
May I respond right quick, just real quick? Okay, just real quick. Miss Balder Robinson, you're ex-military, right? So you're well aware of rules of engagement, Geneva Convention, right? And soldiers, American soldiers, are held to a way higher standard than the police department. And I'm not even talking about putting your hands on people, but I'm talking about the way you conduct yourself in public. And that's because other countries will come to other countries' aid against America being disrespectful. And why don't we have something like that for the police? We got a code for the soldiers going across the world, but yet the police treat the citizens in this country way worse than we're allowed to treat people across the world. I'm ex-military, so I know.
I appreciate your passion. You know, I raised 3 sons that are half Black, and we lived in places like Fort Knox, Kentucky, just down the road from Louisville, where Breonna Taylor was murdered with a no-knock rule and with indiscriminate fire. And my sons can tell you, I've been in a courtroom to defend them. I've been there where police have been, you know, I guess, they need to be held to a standard too, and there are standards. But we need to look at the leadership within those departments too. If they are not being held to the standard, then they should be punished appropriately. They should no longer be able to bear arms or serve as a police officer. And that's gonna take time. It's not impossible, but we will get there. What I don't appreciate is there is a movement of violent behavior in America. And it will continue until we regain the respect that every human life matters. And that's what is not happening. We gotta get on top of that. But thank you so much for your passion and your care.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Harrell. Thank you, Ms. Robinson. We're going to transition now to our next candidate.
Okay. Thank you so much.
So just while we're having this little break, I would like to say that John Snyder, who's running as a Republican for State House 82, was planning on being here today, but his wife had a baby this morning, so he has a very good excuse not to be here.
Thank you, Ms. Ackerley. We're going to give you 2 minutes for introduction. We thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Can you hear me?
No.
Read me. Can you hear me?
Speak right into the mic.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having the forum today, for inviting us here. Thank you very much. Say her name. Say her name. I want to thank you for letting me come here and speak today and having the forum to let everybody, the voters in District 82, know that they have a choice. The first time in a long time. They have a Democratic candidate to represent them in Tallahassee. My name is Alisia Harriel, and I am here to represent you. I have heard your speaking that you want change. You were tired of the one party giving you the same old story and special interest groups. I am here to tell you that I will represent everybody. I am here. I have heard you. I have heard you speak. I have heard your frustrations. I am stepping up to give you what you've been asking for. You've been asking for a choice, somebody to represent, and I am here. I grew up here in Martin County. I am married to a Palm Beach County Fire Rescue, and we have 2 kids, a 16-year-old and a 21-year-old. And we live on a horse farm in Indiantown. We have a horse farm in Indiantown and have property in Palm City. I went to Palm City Elementary School and longtime resident. I'm a native Floridian. I am here to let you know that we no longer will have to, we will have a choice in Tallahassee. And, okay, now we can go ahead. So much with coronavirus, I'm used to trying to keep away from everybody, so excuse me. Is that the time?
And we thank you so very much for that introduction. But I would like to just follow up a little bit more and find out exactly what you say we have a choice. So what is your stance? Why are you running for this seat?
I am running. I am tired of the party, Republican Party, telling us that we have to take what they say. You know, they say to us that they're going to clean the river every election, that they're going to get things done. They have passed bills. They're going to make a difference. But when the next election comes, nothing is done. You know, they present a bill in Tallahassee, but then they take the teeth out of it, so there's no enforcement for it. I am here to tell you that I have not taken any money from special interest groups. I am here to let you know that I will 100% go after when they tell you they're going to do something, we will make sure that we get it done. There is a large group of Democrats who are running in the House districts. We have a candidate in every single race, except for one. We have 140 new candidates running, which if the voters, if they vote in, we can change the powerhouse in the Senate. There's only 4 seats that we need to do to change the power. If we get a Democrat leading Congress, we're going to be able to work on the environment. If we get House members, we only need 14 House members. If we can change the party, we will be able to get bills presented in front of legislation. So we don't have to take these empty promises anymore.
Thank you, thank you. You probably heard this question before. We're going to ask you as well. Governor DeSantis recently submitted a proposal combating violence, disorder, and looting in Law Enforcement Protection Act. We held a peaceful protest here in Martin County, right at the Roosevelt Bridge, I believe back in July, maybe August. It was over thousands of people peacefully. The only problems we had was the heat. Would you support this bill in legislative session in March if you were to become our state senator for District 82?
It would be House candidate 82, House candidate. I was actually at the march that you're referring to. It was actually a very humbling day to see the police department was there and all the protesters. I wouldn't say they were protesters. It was just peaceful people marching across. I didn't see any violence. I didn't witness anything. And I would absolutely be in support of the people. I don't think there's any protest. I do not agree with the governor and his approach to dominate. The legislation is dominating the people. I do not see any violence here in Florida. Other states, there has been some violence, but what I remember the most is the president and his demonstration of authority of what's gonna happen potentially if his election doesn't go his way. It seems like an underlying threat maybe to us. So I do not agree with it. I will not support it. I have not seen here in Martin County any violence whatsoever.
Thank you, Mrs. Ackerley. Thank you, Mrs. Ackerley. So tonight we've talked about systemic racism and the climate crisis. Recent reports have begun to show the threat of environmental racism, especially in the context of climate gentrification in South Florida. What will you do to protect our environment and BIPOC residents that are disproportionately impacted by climate change?
As I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of Democratic candidates running. It's unprecedented. We have not had this many Democratic candidates who are stepping up. They are saying they are tired of the legislation, the body of government ignoring us. There is a proposal on the floor, which I put my name on, the Florida Economic Defense Incentive Initiative, and that is to address the economics of bringing in jobs and also addressing the environment. And as far as the disparity goes, disparity is something that we need to address at every level of government, and besides in the environment. And we need to change everything, how we look at everything. You can tell with the amount of people that are coming forward saying, we want change. You can hear it, you can see it, you can feel it. They are tired of things going the way they are going, have been going, with 30 years of dominating of one party.
Thank you so much. Many times we have candidates forums such as this that come into East Stuart, come into the minority communities, but then we never see them again. So what stance do you have, or what initiatives would you have on behalf of minorities to ensure and improve their abilities and their way of life here in the state of Florida?
Oh, I hear you. I understand. Everybody's looking for votes and they're going everywhere they can. As a resident of Indiantown, I understand. I see it. It's everywhere. As far as what I would do, I'm already in the community. I volunteer at the school level. Specifically, we need to make sure the census is done. We need to make sure that everybody gets counted so that the funds at the federal level, state level can get to the community. We do need to work better with intercommunications. We have a lot of organizations that can help bring more attention to the legislative for what we can do for youth. And we have a lot of things in the community that are not working together as efficiently as they could be. And I think as the gentleman was talking about earlier, there seems to be just frustration and nowhere to go to give your feelings. And with the way the administration is dominating and telling everybody that if they don't step in line, that they're going to have funds reallocated for better training, spend more money on military equipment. The dominating just has to stop so that we can get back to talking and working together as a community.
Thank you. I have a question, and I just thought of this question, so excuse me if it doesn't come off as right. You grew up in Indiantown. Indiantown is one of our highest populations of migrant families, immigration community here in Martin County. We recently had a senator that voted in favor of an immigration bill that will kind of fund more money to ICE. What is your stance on immigration? How could you help the community of Indiantown with the issues they are facing with our police enforcement?
Getting sweaty holding the mic. There's a lot that we're going to have to do. We're going to have to start changing our dialogue as white citizens, how we just talk in general to everybody. you don't realize it, what we say and how it affects everything that we do. And we need to change it from the beginning, how we address immigration, how we talk about it when we have a bunch, well, in Indiantown, we have a bunch of citizens that came in, goodness, in the 1980s, and it changed the makeup of Indiantown. And then the funds were not brought in to be able to socialize and help the community. So the community took, it was a decade of adjustment. And we as a community did not put the federal funds in when we noticed that the census are changing. I think that we could do a better job working and just from this top down, making sure that it starts in education too. I think the funds going in to make better choices. Well, I see everybody talking about time limit, so, but I think I do not support federal changes to that extent without doing community research. I don't know, it's hard to sit and say exactly what I would do as a freshman going in, knowing that we don't have the support. And it all depends on if the legislature changes at the top, because we've got a dominating party who says they don't want social change. They don't want, all they want to do is dominate. It's going to be hard to make policy changes. So it's up to the community here to step up, say, I've had enough, I want some changes. So I will do everything I can when they're brought up to our attention at the state level to make sure the funds are allocated to the district. But if they're bringing up these bills that are pretty aggressive, then there's not much we can do if we don't have the population say, we need change.
Thank you. And just to piggyback off that question, you talked about the education system. And Indiantown Middle School, actually, Warfield Elementary as well, has increased their grade level to an A+ school, whereas some of our other, Hope Sound Elementary, Portsmouth Elementary has gone down. What changes would you make on your first day if you were to become the representative for our school district to help better our public school system?
For me, education is high priority. I have witnessed that. I went to the school system, the public school system here in Martin County. My kids were through the Martin County school system. What I have noticed, and I also have volunteered in the school system, I was on the budget committee for the school board. I see a member of the budget committee is here that served on the board when I was here also, and was on the budget committee, various PTAs, all through the 2 decades of being here. The first thing that I have noticed is that the school system, if you're in the top tier, you get attention. If you're in the bottom tier, you get attention. They have the ESE and the ESC program, but everybody else is lodged into a all education fit all for one. And I do not think that that's proper, because every kid learns differently. We have the different ways, and sometimes we have different ways that the information inputs into a child in order for them to be successful. Sometimes they have an audio and visual learners, different avenues. I think that we need to improve the pre-K, getting the pre-K education. If we get to the children early and give them the skills to learn, because sometimes the cultural changes, as from Indiantown, we had a lot of different cultures coming in, and for them to be able to have to learn, they were skills that they had to go into at Perkins just to learn to be able to go into the public school systems. And the funding was there. They did have the VKP program, but we only had it in Indiantown and Hope Sound, or the Port Salerno. We didn't have it throughout the entire school district. I worked very hard with agencies through the school system to see if we could get a VKP in every one of the school districts. So it just takes community involvement to do more. And at the state level, we need the voices to say, we need this changed. And that goes back to voting the leaders in that you feel will represent you. Because if we don't get elected, you're gonna get the same old what you've been getting.
Thank you. So you brought up immigration and the census. How will you ensure that Indiantown residents can fill out the census without fear of consequences and or deportation?
When we're going out to get out the vote, we're talking to residents, and that is a big concern. That is a big concern. They don't want to fill it out. And it's not necessarily immigrants. It's some residents who are like, I just don't want government involved. And these are business people. These are businessmen in the community. They want government to stop at the front door. They don't want government to come in. For me, I had to just go explain to them, this is not about, no, the government's not going to get your personal information. We need the money. Well, the environment here needs the count so that we can get the funds because of the percentage. Once you explain to them that it is about a systematic system that's set in place and not a tracking system, but then again, it's lack of education on the government's part for not fully giving out the instructions. It's more of the way that it's done. It seems to be authoritarian instead of it looks to me as in my going through the community that we just need more education. Education is key to everything, and instructions clearly so everybody can get the feel and see it instead of just, I don't understand this. Once they do get the understanding and the knowledge that it works, for at least for me, going out to get the vote made a difference.
Thank you. We have a question from our Facebook. The question is, clean water and a healthy biodiverse ecology is one of the most important issues Florida faces as a whole. Almost every aspect of Floridians' lives balances on this issue, from jobs, real estate values, quality of life, and human health. The state of Florida sees BMAPs or BMAPs as a major solution to non-point source pollution of our waterways. Moving forward, do you believe the policy surrounding BMAPs are sufficient and will lead to healthier waterways?
That was a lot there. I'm not sure if I got all of that.
Well, I guess the question just boils down to, do you believe that moving forward, there should be certain policies that are sufficient and will lead to healthier waterways?
I do think we need policies. I've been hollering for a long time that the federal government needs to get us a start date for the EEA so that the federal government, they got an ending date for when the water should be clean, but they don't have a start date at the federal level. We do have some STA programs that are in progress through Southwater Water Management. And I do remember reading something about the BMAPs, but I do know that some of the STAs that we used to have, there's not as many as that we used to have. We have, I mean, it's quite a bit different. I can't remember the exact number. Getting so much information nowadays. I do remember that there's not as many, but I would have to look into that a little bit more. I think when it comes to the environment, the current legislation is not doing enough. They passed a bill. I hear that some of the candidates who are running are promoting or I guess advertising that they've done everything for the environment. But what I do know is that the bill that they put up for legislation, they took the teeth out of it, the enforcement out of it. All they did in the bill was basically best management practices. So, they're not going out. Well, with data and technology, we could go out and have real-time data on all of the sulfur, phosphorus, nitrogen, all of the contaminants, we could have that in real-time data. We wouldn't even have to and we have these apps, so everybody can be able to see it. So we wouldn't have to rely on for the program to go through the system. We would have real-time data, and then it would be able to see, okay, after a storm, that the toxins or whatever's going on in the environment, if it's coming down from Orlando, or if it's coming back up from the agricultural community, or if it's coming in from residential, we would be able to see it. We wouldn't have to rely on the agencies to get the information back to them. We as a community would see it. So I think that it's more than just the maps. I think it's real-time technology. Some of these kids would really, really benefit from this education back into the school system.
Thank you. We have a couple of questions from our audience.
Next question is from me. I'm currently retired Bob Williams. Obviously, I'm a veteran as well. What is your opinion on the recent executive order or directive by the president to basically end diversity, inclusion, and equity training within our governmental organizations? See, I just find that this is what tells me the president don't understand people who serve, people who work in government, or just people who are servants. You know, in the military, we had this thing called crew training, consideration of other people, of others. And this is what he's done with the division is, so my question to you is, what is your opinion on diversity, inclusion, and equity amongst different organizations, businesses, and to include the educational system? I grew up in Boca Raton, so a lot of times people see me, they see me different, right? I went to all white colleges, all white schools, got a lot of education. But I was a professor at Howard University. So I got different experiences, but it's like this young man's frustration is he served his country, but when he walks outside, to include me, I have to be very vigilant and cognizant if I'm going to be stopped by the police. Why is that? Now they might not stop me long because they don't see my military plates, but then I show them my ID card. No, I show them my military ID card, not my driver's license. It's almost like I'm looking for sympathy. So what is your position on diversity, inclusion, and equity throughout these organizations that we represent? And how do you bring that to the people? Because a lot of these things that you say with education, but if you don't see nobody around you that's educated, it's a weird feeling. You know the greatest feeling I ever had? I had a lot of great feelings in my 25 years active duty, total 27 years of service.
3 minutes left.
Okay. But my greatest feeling was being at Howard University, sitting in convocation and doing commencement. In a sea of people, all educated minorities. And I'm talking brilliant. You know. So what is your position on that? I know I'm talking a lot, but I want to say that because I don't think people understand how it affects everyday living, everything we do.
I hear you, and I can feel your passion about a very, very important topic. And it's not just a topic, it's to the core of why this movement that I have been a part of going through the House of the legislative process. I was a stay-at-home mom who was just sitting watching TV and getting up and hollering at the TV saying I didn't agree. I didn't agree with what was going on. And I would get up and I'd go talk to my friends. And one day my son came in and he said, "Mom, you keep telling us to reach for the stars, but it's time for you to make a difference. You keep telling us that you can make a difference, that the community can get together." And then as soon as my son finished talking to me, my phone pinged. And they were asking, would I be interested in running? And it wasn't just Democrats, it was Republicans also. They were demanding a change. Everybody in the community is asking, they are asking all the time, what can we do? Is there somebody willing to stand up to make change? Who has the experience? I've been on county boards. I know what it's like to work or to be the only Democrat in a sea of Republicans and having to speak up. I'm a little nervous speaking up in public here because everybody's watching me, but we're in a forum. I think of Nancy Pelosi when she's sitting there hollering at all the guys, hollering and debating, arguing her point, standing up for change. Sometimes we just have to do it inside and not think about everybody watching us. And what I would do is just keep doing what I've been doing, being the loudest voice, not caring, turning off the internet, not caring, not listening to what everybody else is saying to you or about you. It is about the issue and listening to the public when somebody comes in and saying, hey, we have this going on in this department here, listening to them, analyzing, hearing both sides, and then saying, what can we do to make change? It's not necessarily that I'm going to make the change. It's the community here. It's you guys voting and saying, I want change. I'm here to tell you, I'll be your avatar. What I will do in Tallahassee is continue to do what I've done here in the community.
Thank you.
An extreme introvert to do this is like everything I go against doing. So I appreciate
Good job. Thank you.
the ums. I'm not used to doing that.
Good job.
So I will do everything I can to make change. I will work as hard for every issue that comes up. I know, I'm sorry.
Now we will have the representatives from State House 82.
83?
83. I'm sorry, 83.
EJ, everyone's leaving. What'd you say?
I think it's the last, we're the last one, right?
Yeah. We have a lot of people watching at home.
All right.
Don't miss the heat. But we're gonna turn it back up.
All right, come on, let's go.
So thank you so very much for being here this evening. We are going to ask each of you to give us a 2-minute introduction. So Representative Oberdorf, you have the floor.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, thank you to the NAACP for hosting this evening. Thank you to Jimmy for also making sure all this is set up here. And thank you to my opponent as well for coming here tonight. I've been here in Martin County for well over about 25 years now, and have been a member of this community. This is not my first time in this room, and this is not my first time within this community specifically. I currently have an engineering, civil engineering, as well as an environmental consulting firm. We're based in St. Lucie County, but we work literally all over the Treasure Coast, and as far away as Jacksonville and as far south as Miami. I grew up a Navy baby, so I'm familiar with military service. I was not able to serve when I came out of college, but God has some different plans for people, and so this now is my time for serving through the legislature, having that opportunity. I was in Schenectady, New York at Union College, where I earned my bachelor's degree in biology, and then went on from there and earned a master's degree in biology, as well as a business degree, an MBA, also from Florida Atlantic University. Married my wife about 20 years ago. We have one daughter, and she lives down in Miami now. She went through the University of Florida, and we made the decision that we weren't going to go ahead and go into any kind of a political career until such time that she was out of school. And so I'm thrilled about that. She's graduated on her own and working really hard now. And, you know, frankly, as a biologist and as a member of this community, I'm really looking forward to hopefully being able to continue to serve and also to answer your questions tonight. Thank you so much for your time.
My name is EJ Bernier, by the way, it's B-E-R.
Sorry.
Oh, no worries. I was born in Fort Pierce. I've lived pretty much my whole life on the Treasure Coast. I graduated Beach High School in 1997. Immediately after I did the stint in the Marine Corps, I was a communication specialist. And after college, actually went in for music education. Realized I didn't want to do that. I got interested in first responder. Went to EMT school, fire academy, and since 2008, I've been a firefighter in St. Lucie County. It's a calling. I love it. You get a unique perspective. You go to homes. A lot of times it's not their best day, and so you really get a connection with the community. I was raised by blue collar parents. My mom was a waitress. My dad was a machinist, and so I got to see their daily grind, trying to make a really great middle class life for our family. And so that's really where I get a lot of my values, you know, and I really think it is time for change. There's been a disconnect between Tallahassee and our communities. And so I'm really trying to bridge that disconnect when it comes to healthcare costs, when it comes to social justice, when it comes to a living wage. So people have to work, you know, 80, 90 hours a week to make ends meet. So these things I'm really going to fight for. And like I said, thank you so much, NAACP for bringing this event to fruition. And I'm really looking forward to tonight's debate.
Thank you very much. This question is for both of you, but I will ask Representative Oberdorf to respond first. As you know, the federal appellate court just overturned a ruling on Amendment 4, now requiring all legal fees, fines, and restitution be paid prior to felons regaining their right to vote. Are you in support of Governor DeSantis' victory to keep felons from voting until they paid off these fines?
Thank you for the question. I understand the legality of it. I'm not an attorney. I know that you are. The side of it that I look at is there were the pillars that you were associated with when you committed an infraction and that you were found to be guilty. You had a variety of things that were associated with that, including restitution, including fines and fees. What I voted on previously was to uphold that constitutional side that we voted on as a state of Florida. That within that there was the four corners, if you will, and one of those being fines and fees associated with restitution. As a victim of crime myself, I had a gentleman that went and basically took my money and said he had a truck for me. He never paid for the truck, and the truck was repoed from me. He was arrested, and I never received any of my money back from that. He was ordered to pay restitution, but he never did and went through the process. So my crime was that the crime that was committed against me, that was never repaid. So in my opinion, that gentleman never actually paid his full time. So I'm in support of the full restitution. And yes, I do want to see people back on the voting rolls. Absolutely.
So using your own example, you're saying that since you did not receive your restitution, that should withhold somebody's right or ability or constitutional right to vote?
The Constitution associated with this, and what you're talking about right now, is again the four corners associated with this. And the judge in this case, in my particular case, assigned not only time in prison, but also that there is to be a restitution paid. I can guarantee you that there are multiple people out there that also had restitution that was asked to be paid for them. Can you say that it's true that the penalty, if you will, is completely completed if that restitution is not paid back? Is that actual sentence actually fully completed? In my opinion, it's not. Do I support people that have completed their restitution, completed their time, and done everything to go back onto the voting rolls? You bet I do. Absolutely. And I will work to work with others to make sure that happens.
And then just one more follow-up question. as we know, that this was a voter initiative and where the people of the state of Florida voted that felons should have their rights restored to vote. So do you believe that it's been the legislature's right or initiative to bring about a change to what the citizens have voted?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, because if you actually looked at the Supreme Court when they were debating this amendment, and you look at the actual footage associated with that Supreme Court debate, in that Supreme Court debate, one of the justices specifically asked, does this include fines and fees? And it was, in fact, included within that discussion prior to it being voted on by the general members of Florida and the Florida voters. And so again, I support what the Supreme Court did. And again, I'm just a legislator. If the courts decide that it goes another way, I have to respect that, and I will respect that. However, this is what the court has thus far decided. And again, I will support people that have gone through the process to become back onto the rolls. Absolutely.
Thank you. Sir, I would like you to pronounce your last name so I do not mess it up, please.
Sure, it's pronounced Bernier.
Bernier, Mr. Bernier. I'm going to ask you the same question, as you know that Amendment 4 has been overturned by the federal court, now requiring all legal fees, fines, and restitution be paid prior to felons regaining their right to vote. Do you support this overturning of the felon's ability to vote?
I do not, and I think you got to look at the spirit of the referendum and the wording, and I think it was pretty clear cut that when people did their time, finish their time, that they should have their rights restored. And I honestly think it's a modern day poll tax. And what it does, it suppresses a certain economic, demographic, and I don't think it's fair.
Thank you.
On the ballot this year, we have Amendment 2, which will increase minimum wage. Here in Florida, we're at $8.56 as of 2020. Each year, it will increase $1. By the time it's 2026, we will be at $15 an hour. Do you support this ballot initiative to increase minimum wage to better our economy here in Florida?
Mr. Bernier.
Oh, Mr. Bernier first.
Sure, I appreciate the question. I will vote yes on that referendum, and I honestly support, if that doesn't go through, if I were to be in that seat, to push for a 15-hour minimum wage. I think we haven't seen, we look at the median wage for Florida, it hasn't been keeping up with the cost of healthcare, the cost of basic necessities. And so we're seeing more and more people's percentage of their income going to basic necessities. So when the minimum wage originally came about, it was supposed to keep a floor, an economic floor. And that floor has been getting lower and lower and lower. So yeah, absolutely, I do support it. And if it doesn't pass as a legislature, I'd push for a vote on the House floor for a $15 minimum wage at that same type of increment.
I do not support Amendment 2 or the increase in the minimum wage as it currently exists. At this time, in Florida, we're just coming out of a major economic crisis, as we're all aware in this room. I don't believe it's the right time for this. Additionally, we're comparing Florida to many other states out there that have a higher cost of living, that don't have the similar opportunities that we have here in Florida. Additionally, as we look at the minimum wage, we also haven't looked at what is it going to do to businesses. I walked into McDonald's in Fort Pierce recently, and if you all notice, they now have the touch screen associated with it. I think we have it out here in Stuart as well, where there's a touch screen. Why is that? That's because that McDonald's owner and the corporation has decided that the workers, they cannot pay enough for the workers to be there. If we continue to have the raise and these minimum wages going up and up and up, we're actually going to see corporations make decisions that will instead alienate the worker further. We've already seen it in healthcare costs, where we've gone from a minimum 40-hour work week, And they reduced it now to below 30 hours. Why? So the healthcare costs aren't being paid. So we're already seeing that in other areas. If we increase the minimum $15 an hour, I'm afraid it's actually going to be bad for the economy. We're actually going to lose jobs, and there'll be more employers that are looking for ways to skirt around that and not employ as many people as they could otherwise.
I just want to, I read something that you had stated in TC Palm where you said that Mr. Grenier has been a government worker for his career, and frankly, he's never had to write a check. It's extremely hard for a person who has never been in that position to really understand the full impact of minimum wage and the full impact of what it costs to run a business. So I guess my question would be to you, have you considered the full impact of raising a family on a minimum wage and making sure that your children can eat, pay the rent, pay utilities? Have you considered that increase may assist them, you know, whether they're working at McDonald's, because there's still people at McDonald's, or whether they're at Walmart? Have you considered the impact on families if we fail to increase the minimum wage?
So since you brought up McDonald's as a minimum wage, they start there. If by any chance that they're actually raising a family and moving on and they're staying at McDonald's, it actually gives minimum wages. Minimum raises, I apologize, opportunities for education, opportunities for healthcare, et cetera, associated with that particular company. As you advance and as you move forward, you're typically not at minimum wage. You have experience that's brought forward. So as a person that is, as an employer, we don't have people that work minimum wage in my particular company. And we have folks that are literally right out of school that come to work with us, whether it be college or high school. So again, it goes back to that particular person. And to the comments earlier, yes, I own a business, and yes, I look at the bottom line associated with that. So I would not, again, support Amendment 2 at this point in time.
Mr. Bernier?
Yeah, I appreciate it. Well, if you look at the history of it, whenever they raised the minimum wage in the history of it, they did it in the 90s, 2000s, it actually was economic expansion when they raised the minimum wage. Going back to his comments in TC Palm, the fact that I'm a career government worker, a little offensive, because I think people that either work in the public sector or private sector doesn't mean that you work any less harder, doesn't mean that you care any less about your job. Doesn't mean, I think it was a kind of just a little poke at, maybe, I don't know, economic policy. And he said that I never written a paycheck. No, I have not written a paycheck, but I've written plenty of checks to bill collectors, because you have to keep a house, you know, a roof over our heads, dinner on the table. And a lot of people in this room and outside these walls also write checks to pay for a mortgage, pay for rent. And they're finding out that these checks aren't going as far as they used to. And so I think we have a responsibility to not just value work, but value workers. And so that's why I do support the minimum wage increase.
Thank you. So this question is posed first at Mr. Oberdorf. So across third-degree felonies, one of our judges here in Martin County offered to withhold adjudication, thank you, for 14% of Black defendants. The withheld rate was 23% for white defendants. This means that even though they were charged with the same crimes, that the laws considering equally severe, Black people were more likely to lose their civil rights, such as voting, if not through the amendment proposed previously. How do you plan on reducing racial disparities and enabling Black Americans to vote when their rights are taken away?
Can I ask for clarification? Are you asking about the judge itself, or are you asking again about Amendment 4?
Any policies you have that plan on reducing the disparity that disproportionately puts Black people in our justice system and disproportionately puts them there for longer for the same crimes. So
last year I worked with Senator Brandes on exactly that, which was looking at the sentencing associated with disproportional sentencing. We looked at reducing sentencing as well, and also looked at how that sentencing is affecting Floridians. So we've already begun that work on that. We're working with Senator Brandes, working with other members in the House. There's another gentleman named Tommy Gregory that we have been working with specifically to look at this and how it is disproportionately affected. I do work across the aisle and work with others that are associated not just with my party and not just look like me. We work literally across the board up there. We are not as divisive in the Florida House as the press may seem, or as others. We actually work together, work for a common good for Floridians. And again, the press would love to get a hold and say there's divisiveness and everything else, but there's not. I think that's the best thing that we can do, is to continue working together, working across the aisle, working with people that don't look like each other, and making sure that we're passing things that's good for all Floridians.
What's the result of that work?
So what are the results of that work? What are some of the policies that we've seen that have effectively reduced disparities? And if there aren't some yet, what are some policies you plan on passing that will reduce these disparities?
So again, this is an area that we're looking at for reducing sentencing associated with crimes that are being committed, nonviolent felonies for one thing, looking at opportunities there. The other thing that, frankly, that I have worked on is getting into communities with skills training, getting into communities with education specifically, and changing the pattern from the beginning. It's very hard to stop the train, but it's easier to get it started in the right direction that you want it to go. And that is with the education, with community outreach, with working in and being a part of that community, of which I am. And so having those opportunities for people instead of trying to fix it after it's already moving, that's an area that I feel strongly about. And then we need to work with our next generation to make sure that all people have good jobs, all people have that education and skills training, and all people are, in fact, treated equally.
Thank you. And the same question is posed to you, Mr. Brunet.
I appreciate it. You know, talk is cheap. And right now we have a system that is not fair. And the statistics that you brought up just prove that. And so when it comes to getting rid of minimum sentencing, when it comes to looking at the whole system, it needs to be changed. This is not sustainable what we have right now. It's not sustainable. It's not fair. And he talked about skills training. Well, there was a bill that he actually came up with, HB 6035. Certain groups were training apprentices to get into better jobs. Then asking for tuition. His bill actually took that away. So, the rhetoric has to match the record, and in this instance, I don't think it does.
Since my opponent brought it up, House Bill 6035 was a repealer bill, and it was meant to be fair. The reality is that there's an educational facility in Miami that is, in fact, currently charging for apprenticeships, which is against the current law. And so what we were trying to do was to make that opportunity available for Indian River State College, which actually follows the rules and follows the laws. And so what this was intended to do was a shot across the bow. It was filed. It was never heard. It was never brought forward. And in fact, I talked to Sean Mitchell, who is who you're talking about, who was very upset about this from the Steelworkers Union, and explained the position. To which he said, yes, I understand what you did. What this is, never passed, never went forward, but it was a shot across the bow saying, look, you're going to teach one university and they're going to get by skirting the rules. We're going to make the rules right so that it's applicable to all universities. And in fact, we can expand the apprenticeship program. So thank you for bringing that up and allowing me to expand upon that, because I do want to expand on the apprenticeship program and the skills program. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have questions from our audience as well as our Zoom. For Mr. Overdose, 3 years ago, the Florida House passed House Bill 9, which makes local law enforcement honor warrantless ICE detainer requests, which is a clear violation of these people's civil rights. Would you reconsider this law?
Can you repeat exactly? I mean, I wasn't there 3 years ago, so if you want to.
Well, the Florida House passed House Bill 9, which makes local law enforcement honor warrantless ICE detainer request, which is a clear violation of the people's civil rights. Would you reconsider this law?
I'd have to look at the law itself to really understand. I mean, you're bringing up one House bill. Honestly, I really don't, I'm not familiar with it. I'm not familiar with what it did. And frankly, my area of study is not the legality system. So I apologize, but I'd have to look at it first.
Thank you.
John?
Are you asking that same thing?
No, this was a question from the audience, and it was, they have their.
Okay, thank you.
I'm thrilled that you met with Senator Brandes or Representative Brandes. He is one of the Republicans who are doing good work for criminal justice reform, or trying to.
And I did it at your urging, by the way.
Well, thank you. What's really notable is there were over 50 bills presented for criminal justice. Only 2 passed in last year's legislative session. So if we could get more Republicans to speak and, with camaraderie, we might get something done, because there were some terrific bills there. The mandatory sentencing bill that you mentioned, it died in the Appropriations Committee that Senator Harriel sits on. I didn't get to ask her about it. So, but I'm not about criminal justice. There were 4 bills you voted yes for. That just shocked me. But it was typical party line stuff. There are 2 of them. Pick which hand you want me to ask about.
I'll take the middle.
No, give me one, because I can't
Right
decide.
hand, that's fine.
All right, right hand. Whoa, the constitutional amendment bill. Times and rules for constitutional amendments which will further inhibit citizen initiatives like the Land and Water Conservation Amendment, or more recently, Amendment 1. Signatures must come from 1/2 instead of 1/4 of the state's congressional districts. The trigger for judicial review will jump from 25% to 25% from 10% of total signatures. The bill also prohibits citizen groups from using voter signatures gathered in one election for the next election, so they don't have to be collected for the same election season. And it allows local supervisors of elections to charge the actual cost of verifying the voter signatures that are submitted for review. One estimate is $6 to $8 million for a petition process. This kills citizen initiative. Why would you vote yes for that?
Well, I don't believe that we should be legislating our state by continually changing our constitution. The Constitution is not, in my opinion, is meant to be a document that we then have to uphold and not continually change over and over and over. The one reason I voted on the signature thing, do you think it would be fair if I gathered some signatures now and was able to use them again in the next election? Probably not, to get on the ballot. So that was another reason that I felt about that, if it's for that election. So that is why I think that the Constitution of the Constitution of Florida should stay the Constitution of Florida and should not be changing every single time we have an election.
Mr. Bernier, what caused you to decide to run for office, and what would you bring to the table?
Sure. Well, I was planning to get into politics when I get older, when I get retired from the fire department, but I decided to jump in a little early. One of the reasons was a bill that my opponent voted for is HB1, which actually cripples public sector unions. Now, thank goodness it didn't go very far in the Senate, but when it comes to first responders bargaining for their wages, the whole idea of unions are enshrined in the Florida Constitution. So what they're trying to do is actually bleed the unions financially. That was one of the reasons. Another reason is, as a paramedic, I go to people's houses all the time, and I hear all the time, I can't afford to go to the hospital. Just check me out. I can't afford another bill. During the TC Palm store not too long ago, actually a few days, I think it might have hit today, my opponent said that everyone has access to health care if they need it. To me, that's ER. And that's not, that's a very inefficient way to provide health care to your citizens. You don't go to the ER for managing blood pressure. You don't go to the ER for managing diabetes. 2.8 million Floridians do not have health insurance right now. If they were to expand Medicaid tomorrow, over 2 million Floridians to see a doctor tomorrow. And prevention is key to manage their diabetes, manage their hypertension or elevated blood pressure. Expanding Medicaid in Florida would actually be a boon to the economy as well. In addition to our state cost by millions of dollars annually, Medicaid expansion would project to bring more than $14 billion to our state in the next 5 years. So the two main reasons why I jumped in is 1, for workers, and 2, for healthcare access for Floridians.
Thank you.
Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. A lot of the work, I'm the media past president for the Military Officers Association of America here on the Treasure Coast. So as a retired colonel, Army colonel, one of the things I work diligently in the community is with homeless veterans and feeding the hungry. This minimum wage issue goes directly to that, and the pandemic has made it worse. I'm on the board of Sarah's Kitchen. We feed 1,650 meals per week right now. I go out every Thursday to mobile sites. What are your plans to address homelessness, food insecurity for those who are hurting right now? We got a lot of people hurting. See, I'm nice and comfortable, right? I get many checks. Come to their house every month. But it's people that's real people that's hurting every day. And some of it is a function of, you're on a fixed income and you only can make your money stretch to a certain part of the month. Then the rest of the month, you have to go, or you plan it out over the course of the month. You go to the food, you got 5 churches that feed, and they'll go to those churches. So what are your plans, or either gentlemen, what are your plans to address homelessness and food insecurity for folks in our community here on the Treasure Coast?
Please keep your answers brief.
Sure. Working as a paramedic, I do interact a lot with our homeless population, and a lot of them have healthcare issues that they can't handle and self-medicate either through alcohol or other means. And so access to mental health care is huge. Medicaid expansion will do that. For a lot of these people that need mental health care, Medicaid expansion will do that. Once they get the health care they need and they get a job, then they'll have a wage that can pay for a room, pay for rent, pay for basic necessities. And so it goes at the core of where our values are in the state. Is our values expanding healthcare to millions of Floridians that need it, or is it corporate tax cuts? And so, sorry, I'll stop right there. But that's the first step.
To respond real quickly, I work already with everyone from La Jolla to a variety of faith-based operations here locally. Faith Farm is another group that we're working with. So it's a Band-Aid, if you will, for feeding. But yes, I see it every day, and when I'm working and volunteering with those organizations. I go back to education and retraining of people if they choose to work. We just passed the mental health side this year. As far as your veterans, we also passed a bill that would give them the experience to allow them to get college credit for the time that they served as well. So they're actually already moving ahead in that educational component. We also were passing some opportunities for looking at different ways of housing, including tiny homes and other things like that. That was some legislation that came forward this past year. It didn't make it all the way through, but there are things that we're looking at as outliers.
That's excellent. I'm going to make the last point. Is I like everything both of you guys say, but here's the problem we've been experiencing in St. Lucie County. See, nobody wants like the mental health people in their backyard. Like we find a facility, we got money to go purchase it, but nobody want to bring the homeless into their backyard. And that is a problem. These are the things that we need legislators to address with their local community and their constituents.
Let's move over to our last question of the night.
Okay, this is gonna be for Mr. Overdose first, and then Mr. Brunet. The 1950s and the 60s, Black America fought for civil rights. The Civil Rights Bill was passed. As soon as they passed, America passed the Civil Rights Bill, they brought in every European immigrant and Asian immigrant they could, so it wouldn't go to black people, it would go to minorities. I'm not against any immigrants. I don't have no problem with the foreigners that are here illegally to do the cheap labor or whatever. But here in Martin County, what are you going to do to ensure that black businesses get the funding, black businesses get the contracts, not minorities, blacks, because that's what the Civil Rights Bill was for, blacks.
I don't remember color being mentioned in the Civil Rights Bill.
And that's the problem.
So I don't remember color being mentioned in the Civil Rights Bill. I remember it as, from what I read, I wasn't alive when it passed.
I wasn't.
However, what I do remember is that this is a right that we're guaranteed for all Americans across the board. So whether it's you or me or anybody else in this room, it's what we're guaranteed for. So all I can do is live my life.
We're already over time. So let's
And
just
continue my life associated with this, continue my life associated with treating everybody in this room exactly the same, leading by example in order to do that. As far as employment, what I do associate with that is we do have already programs, whether it be through the state or et cetera. Again, they do not differentiate, but there are some that are black-owned businesses that are associated with federal programs that have that. And if I recall correctly, as a former GSA contractor, so there are other opportunities that are there. I'd be more than happy to talk with you further about this offline and maybe find some opportunities that may fit your criteria.
So I appreciate the question. And there's been a history of social injustice, including redlining, including, when it goes back to the Civil Rights Bill, addressing things like loans to African Americans for businesses. And so I would absolutely want to look into that. And, you talk about everybody, but it's not everybody that's suffering. And just like you cannot say all lives matter until you can say Black Lives Matter. And so I would absolutely look into different programs for minority and African American business owners to make sure that they have the same opportunities, because statistics show that they're not getting the same opportunities when it comes to loans, when it comes to starting a business. So I would see what we can do from the legislation standpoint.
Thank you.
Just to clear Mr. Over, if it was for all Americans,
we don't have time.
that's all right, but if it was for all Americans, we wouldn't need no civil rights bill.
We thank you, candidates, for joining us tonight. Thank you to our audience. Thank you, Jackie, Mimi, Jimmy, for all the work that you've done to put this together. Everything was excellent. We appreciate you. Don't forget to get out to vote. So proposed October 24th and the 25th. And we're going to close out with a brief good prayer. Hi, Mr. Flanagan.
Who said it first?
So,
Thank you, moderator.
Yes, thank you.
Father, thank you, Lord, for we have heard in this place today, all the candidates, Lord, that came and gave their voice and what they will do for your people, God. We pray that you continue to bless each and every one of us. Give us traveling grace safely home as we return. In the name of our Lord Jesus. Amen. Amen.
Thank you, audience on Zoom. I'm going to end the Zoom. We will be sharing a recording of tonight's forum, so please share it with your friends. Thank you.